often use the word configuration, which means with figuration, with the understanding that my interest in sculpture really has to do with the drawing out of material, of figure or configuration. I configure the different material into images that are very basic. The images are of my imagination, or they're of nature, they're particles, but they're very much kind of icons representing something more complex than just a drawing. They are very complex in surface and form, and they may have paint or not on them, and they may do different things, and they're about skin. Painting is always about skin and surface, and sculpture is about the variation of the skin and surface to make a form that is three-dimensional. So I find myself caught between the ideas of skin and surface and form, and they are the beginnings of form, or the beginnings of growth patterns in both animal matter and plant matter. In a way, I studied biology, and of course I am familiar with the different kinds of plants, and the monocots and the dicots, and the way they experience their growth through their vascular bundles in the center of their bodies. In this case, the life is gone in the center of the body, and you can see only the life that was, perhaps, or you imagine the life that was. These are skins that are shed from maybe some unknown being. I don't know, but I'm compelled to define some of these beings that seem to both haunt me, but also that are friendly ghosts, or they're friendly animals or vegetables, whatever they are. I think of them as spirits. And sometimes they have their glitter, or their past marks them. They've been through maybe depths of the oceans. Maybe they've just collected a little bit of tar on the top of the water from some steamship that happened, or some oil refinery that sort of exhausted the oil. But these blacks you see are actually from coal, where oil is actually processed deep in the earth. We have oil and gas right underneath the earth that we have my studio on. In fact, just next door to me, they process gas and oil here. And there's a coal mining place in Madrid here. I took some of the coal and we had it grounded with some friends of mine that I do ceramics with. So we made a paint of the coal. So these are things that happen and have happened here in prehistoric times, perhaps. You have the spot of the coal itself, which is referencing the oil that's underneath us now. And I have done ceramics here in Taos and with the collaborative team. And the paper I do here in my studio. So it's nice to have all the experience of doing the different processes either nearby or within the studio.
There is one piece called quarter meteor,
yes,
made of lead. Could you
yes.
tell something about this piece?
Well, I was thinking at that time about this seriousness of matter and thinking about matter itself and the elements. And the piece was so strong, it was my first really strong work in the corner, and I decided that it should be of a very significant material, so I decided to make it out of lead. And this particular work is owned by the Tate Museum, and I thought to think of it as also being of this earth, but also of a foreign place. I'd call it a quartered meteor instead of a full meteor. It wasn't a full form, it was a quarter of the room, so to speak, taken, cast into the corner itself.
And then in front, in contrast with it, we have the sherbet piece in the
night
floor.
sherbet, yes.
Will you talk a little bit about the process when you start pouring the colors on the
Yes, the first colors I poured were in latex rubber.
latex?
And it was rubber latex we were getting from Nigeria. And the rubber consultant from Washington came and said, Lynda would like to put you on the cover of the Rubber Bureau magazine. We were getting our rubber from Liberia. And so he photographed me as I was doing a piece in situ in Oniaka College, and I gave it to them. And he had given me the rubber itself, and I brought my pigments, but at that point I was in Life magazine just prior to that, which is why I was asked by the U.S. Government Rubber Bureau to comment on their rubber, so to speak. My comments have always been in art, and I think art can be very political. Abstract art in particular has always been political because it's so universally understood. And it's always been a good thing to export in a sense because of that universality.
What about the importance of spaces and architecture in your work? Because you relate these bodies and these forms to a space, in a way as a choreographer also. Here is your quote, "I'm dancing with the clay."
Yes.
How you relate to spaces, and specifically for the museum, the Museo Internacional del Barroco in Puebla by Toyo Ito, where the fold is the form that defines the building.
Well, these are kind of spirits that seem to love beautiful spaces, and they like beautiful new walls. And I have seen Ito and actually have met him in India, and I was impressed with his sincerity and his really love of light. And I was so excited, the coincidence of being invited to one of his grand museums, and this museum is one of the most grand in the world, and a huge statement by him and of the people in Mexico, really, that have honored themselves and others with such a grand building. And it's a tribute to art, architecture, and the people themselves. So I'm so excited to show in this new space, because these pieces are also visitors, and they welcome visitors as well. So I feel these are like birds that have flown a bit more south, and they're perched there for your interpretation of both the architecture and the world that we all live in.
And at the end of the exhibition we have the fountains, and there is this beautiful fountain also by Toyo Ito, so there is a dialogue with water.
Yes.
The flow of water.
Yes,
Could you say
yes.
something for that?
Yes. Well,
what would be the last image that visitors would have of the exhibition?
Well, I've only seen photographs of Ito's marvelous idea of the whirlpool and the idea of this, just this captivating energy swirling. And I can't help but think about the mythic idea of the maids that were thrown into the pool themselves, but also just the idea that we all have whirlpools of our minds that captivate us and that send us down, but our spirits soar with that concept of the dichotomy of the spirit being both pulled with gravity and the fluidity of our minds. I tend to use the forms of explosions and waves to symbolize the motion of water and the continuous illusion of movement. And I am hoping that my symbolic gestures will also complement his building and his fountain.
Exactly. And it's a Baroque allegory. And you know, the word Barroco comes from this deformed pearl, Barroco, which
Yes.
is not round, but it has
Yes.
different shapes, like
Yes,
your
yes,
sculptures.
yes,
And there is a very nice definition of the Baroque by Mario Perniola, who says that the essence of the Baroque is enigmatic.
yes.
And I think your work is also enigmatic. You don't have to know exactly what it is or what it represents. No, but it has this enigmatic nature,
Yes.
which is part of the enchantment that it has.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. I would like to ask you something about also the idea of the poetry behind your work. I think it's very poetic in this relation with nature. And could you say a few words about the poetics and the philosophy? You studied philosophy in your university also. I think your thoughts are very important behind the works also.
Well, I mentioned the idea that these pieces are kind of perching. They're not done on a specific wall. And I like you to kind of see that they are in terms of form very suggestive, but also they could perhaps even fly away.
Mm-hmm.
They could be taken by the wind.
Mm-hmm.
They are not in bronze in this case. They're in paper and chicken wire. And these are very accessible materials for anyone to work with. And I would just like to suggest to all the people that do not have the means to, say, work in various metals or expensive tools, that you can also make things, everyday things, and make forms and make new ideas in simple ways, such as paper and chicken wire. These are things that are available to everyone, really.
Mm-hmm. And we are going to have workshops also for children and for people to do.
You know, I heard very recently someone that took the most inexpensive toilet paper, just with water and glue, and could make this paper mache. You can make paper with anything, really. We happen to be ordering our paper material, but what does interest me that we have materials of clay, even in these arroyos here. I've made slips for my ceramics, and of course the Native Americans right here produced the most beautiful ceramics hundreds of years ago, which I've found shards from hundreds of years ago here and pre-Columbian. And it's just interesting that we all live in a climate where there have been histories before us where they've used the earth and they've used the indigenous materials and made art. And this is something that we all, if not aware of, I mean, in Mexico, you have the history right there of the pyramids. You have the history, and it's just so rich, as it is here too.
Exactly. And Puebla has the Talavera ceramics, also from the Spanish tradition.
Yes,
And
yes.
we would love you to share that traditions also with your ceramics and
Yes.
pottery.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Lynda,
Thank
for
you.
having us here
Thank you.
and welcoming us in your studio.
Thank you.
It has been a pleasure.
Thank you.
And the place where the spirit and the soul of your work is, I think,
Well, thank
here
you.
in the middle of the desert.
Yes, you spent one night here. I wish you could stay longer.
Okay.
Come back.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, come
Thank you.
back.